Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Go, On the Topic. And this week I am hanging off a train and doing all kinds of crazy stunts because it's Tom Cruise. I'm Alex.
And I'm leaping off a cliff whilst driving a motorbike. I am Dan.
He just can't do things normally, can he?
No, he can't.
And as I said, this is an on-the-go episode, so if you haven't listened to one of these marvellous things before listening, then you're in for an absolute treat. It's short and sweet, but effectively what Dan and I are currently doing, a bit of AMSR, or ASMR? ASMR.
Yeah.
I always get them mixed up. We are on our walk to the local cinema.
And it is it's eased off a little bit. It is
Pretty
raining,
gross.
It's very windy. At the time of recording, our South Sea Food Festival for the Saturday has been cancelled because we're expecting 50 to 55 mile per hour winds, so it could get a bit lively.
That's not nothing. But I guess if you've got tents,
Yeah.
they'll be flying all around the local shopping centre. So yeah, the local people are having a bit of a sad time, but we're hopefully going to have a great time over the next couple of hours, listening, because it's Dead Reckoning Part 1. So as all these films, started off with Harry Potter and they split the films into two. I don't think this is going to be a finale. I think Cruise probably going to continue doing it as long as he can, like Harrison Ford. But
I think he wants to do it until he's like 80, from what I read
probably
recently this week.
He loves it, which isn't a bad thing because we love it too. But he's split this storyline into two films. He's back-to-back film it, and it's the first outing this summer. I don't know too much about the storyline. The last one had Henry Cavill with his reloaded arms in the toilet, which was actually that was off the cuff. Do you know that off the cuff scene? He didn't actually have that written into the script. Yeah,
he apparently said it's so intense. That fight scene was so intense. It was like a recharge of his biceps.
Exactly. He had to do clip after clip and had to actually shake it off. Oh, we're being one over the road. That he did the old reloaded arms and actually worked perfectly.
Yeah, it just looks beautiful, doesn't it?
But Henry Cavill being a baddie works fantastically as well. But
handsome bastard.
he is. But we haven't read too much about this one, to be fair.
No, and you know what? I've not really been a fan of the Mission Impossible films until the end of last year. So
Right.
my other half wanted to watch all six. I said, okay. Well, do you know what? I'm not a massive Tom Cruise fan, and I don't really have a lot of love or care for these films. I've only sort of briefly seen them in the past. But actually, I really enjoyed them. Tom Cruise does his own stunts, and of course he broke both ankles filming Mission Impossible 6.
He did.
Leaping from one building to another. What a madman, eh?
And you can actually see it on the film reel. So it's the seventh outing, as you said, number 7. It's got some of the familiar faces returning. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I never went to see the first one in the cinema. I always wanted to back in, I think it was 1995, 96.
I think it was like 96, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I remember the computer game on the N64.
Oh, was that?
Which I borrowed off my friend, and you had to do sort of various things like spray paint the cameras so you could get around without getting caught.
Really? Okay.
You had to do the old dangly thing through the laser grid.
Beautiful.
It was good fun. Good game, to be fair.
But I think my favourite is Mission Impossible 2 because it's very artistic and stylish and slow-mo action. Lots of long hair and climbing and bike. Is it Justin Lin directed film? I think he's known to do those type of things and direct that style. And in Mission Impossible 3, which is a different tone. I mean, most of the films are tonally different, apart from, I guess, the last couple. But they all have a different vibe. So I guess for me, I'm looking for something just slightly different, Dan. The last couple of films were good. 5 and 6, Ghosts, Protocol, and what was the last one?
Oh, blimey. No, you're asking.
Yeah, I am. Anyway, they kind of felt like a continuation of one another. There's nothing wrong with that, but actually I'm looking for something just a tad different this time. It was all good, but I want something a little bit different. All these guys about to get squished by a lorry. That's not very intelligent. Just walking past the ferry terminal, listener. We've got lorries and people crossing roads and not looking where they're going. We often talk about public service announcements on this podcast channel. And I think if you take anything away from this episode, listener, just look both ways when you cross the road, regardless of what country you're in, regardless of where the traffic's coming from. Just look both ways.
People piling off the Isle of Wight ferry by the looks of things.
They're getting off the island before it gets battered, probably. So yeah, do we know much more about the film?
I don't know much, but I think we were saying earlier when I arrived at your house, it's going to be nice after a long week at work. it's been a challenging week, and actually we're going to cinema to enjoy it. We don't have to concentrate that much. I've got, no expectations really. I think you just have to do something slightly different. And where it's a part one, I think you need to have the stakes quite high. And actually, it's got to be about the mission and not the people around him.
Okay. And this is the thing, I reckon someone's going to cark it.
You reckon someone's going to be someone big, like Simon Pegg? Or...
Ving Rhames.
Oh.
He's been there since the beginning. I think it's probably time for one of the biggies to up the ante, because you haven't really lost anyone really that's that meaningful since Mission Impossible 3, which was his wife when he had to get her relocated with witness protection, and his protege who died with the device in her head, which is quite a harrowing scene. If you remember,
Mission Impossible 3 where they get through the building relatively unscathed, but she gets the headache, and then all of a sudden
she's
it's like
just about to save her with the defibrillator, and no, she's...
I think it was like 3 seconds to go.
It's crazy. Yeah, exactly. And
all of a sudden her head suddenly just jolts and her eyeball just...
Yeah.
Grim.
Very harrowing, but a great film. I don't think anyone really important enough to Ethan Hunt has actually carked it.
No.
So I think, they've got to up the ante. And I think Dead Reckoning 2's probably got to be some kind of revenge plot. We're going to get run over here? No, Dan said thank you. Good man.
Braving the road here
without
trying to get run over by all the cars coming out. Exciting times.
My money is on a big name.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, when you look at some of the trailer, it looks like there's going to be some horrendous things happening with the big bad. I think there was like a room where like this big green smog of smoke goes up. So it could be some sort of like biological...
Oh, yes, I see. Yes. Yeah, in the meeting, and a briefcase goes up in the green pot of smoke, so...
Quite looking forward to see what Hayley Atwell brings to the film, actually.
Yeah, it's a fair one, actually, because you've got a number of good, strong female characters. You've got the lass who was Mantis in Guardians of the Galaxy. She's in it.
Pom Klementieff.
Yes, great name. She's in it. So you've got a lot of strong female actresses. Or actors, should I say? I think it's going to be really good. And you say Hayley Atwell is one of the leading actors in it. I'm wondering whether she has the chemistry though with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, she seems to riff very well off Chris Evans. Does she have the same chemistry, or have enough to pull it off with Tom Cruise?
Tom Cruise is a big actor. He's been around since the 80s.
But also, Dan, in this one and most of the other films, he's the boss. He directs it, he funds it, he produces it, he stars in it. So can you really have that kind of relationship where you feel that comfortable around him?
Yeah, I mean, we know what Tom Cruise is all about, because when they started filming these films during COVID, there's, of course, that infamous scene...
Effing and blinding
his cast and crew because they're not socially distancing or wearing a mask.
Which is fair enough, but I mean, there's ways and means of communicating your displeasure, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Walking past Las Iguanas.
We've now hit the wildlife of Gunwharg.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the wind's picked up again.
It has. So I guess in fear, listener, of getting blown away, we should probably call it there. Next time you hear us, we'll be fast-forwarding to the future by about 3 hours, and we're going to give a spoiler-free review of what we've just seen and our first initial thoughts and takeaways.
Yeah, can't wait. I'll see you then. And just like that, we are back. We are through the cinema doors. That was really good.
It was, yeah.
Phenomenal.
2 hours, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 40 minutes of, I guess, pure, unadulterated Tom Cruise.
Oh, it's got everything. Humour in the right places, I'd say. A lot of action.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of nightlife by the looks of things.
We have, yeah. It's quite busy out here, isn't it? Friday night down in Gunwharg. Who would have thought there's a cost of living crisis going on with the amount of people enjoying their time out? But hey, you got to live.
Let's not take it away from people.
No. Thoughts, Dan? I mean, this is spoiler free. We are not going to spoil it for the listener, because of course we are coming straight from opening week. It's only a couple of days that's been in the cinema, so we're not here, listener. You should know this by now. To spoil it for you, but we are going to give a spoiler-free initial thoughts. And I guess, Dan, if I may, I think this is... Oh, we're walking past... Someone's emptied the contents of their stomach by the looks of this.
Oh, grim. Or is it just crisps? I don't know.
Crisps. Anyway, gross. Let's go on with keys for you on a Friday night. I'm not sure if this makes any kind of real sense. I think I'll need to kind of formulate it and write it down ready for our review, no doubt, in the next week. It kind of feels like a natural culmination of all other films come together, but it feels more of a natural success to the first one. Do you know what I mean by that? Because when you've seen them all recently, as you said, I don't know, just a mere 10 minutes ago. But before we press pause on the first half of this episode, I mentioned I wanted something new. I wanted something that recognised the other films, but was something unique. I think we got it.
Yeah, and I said the stakes need to be higher, and it definitely comes with that full package of what we both wanted.
But it doesn't feel like a cheap shot, Dan. Like in the other films, it amps up, or it's roughly the same. This actually naturally feels like it is all on the line, and it is different, but it's the same, it's familiar. Yeah. But not in a rehashed kind of way.
I mean, you were quite right as well. As we were exiting, you said that this is the sort of film where it just felt like it came to a natural end, but it gives you enough to go, oh, there is going to be a part 2, but actually, if you want to watch it as a standalone film...
Oh, you can.
It would kind of work.
Yeah, and exactly that. So, again, we can't say too much, listening. There'll be a spoiler-rific episode... film review in a week, so obviously you can go see the film and have your own opinions. But I think, and when I look at other films that have split the films in half, I don't know if they've done it that well. You can watch this film because it's an action film. It's Tom Cruise. He's done his homework. He's done something special. And if that's all you want, that's all you've got.
Yeah.
And as you say, you don't have to go back for part 2. And I don't know any other film that does it quite so well, that you're not left wanting too much more. Do you know what I mean? Like, you always feel like you're shortchanged because it's a 6-hour film, but you've only seen half of it. Whereas I didn't get that sense this time. I do want to see the second part, don't get me wrong.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
But I don't feel shortchanged, and that's really odd.
Yeah. It's done really well. It's phenomenal. It's brilliant. I mean, having seen the previous 6 quite recently, I'd say that's probably my favourite one.
Definitely, and I think for me, Dan, as I was watching this, it's very difficult not to kind of do what we do. It ruins film watching to some extent, but I still enjoy it, of course, because I look at this and go, that's cool, I've got to remember this. And the one thing I think that really stood out for me, apart from the fact of how it felt and the other films in context, was the cinematography.
Yeah.
And if I think about the more recent films, again, I don't think I'm spoiling for you this. And if you haven't seen it, not going to see it, or not quite now, wait for digital release, whatever. But it took cues from, I don't know, like Nolan, and it took cues from Extraction. The one shots and the very close up POV type style in the action. You felt you were there, and he hasn't really done that in the other films before. So for me, it kind of felt like it was refreshed, but because he was taking on a different type of filmmaking we haven't seen before in those films. No. They made it more immersive.
In some of the action sequences as well, I noticed there's a bit of lens flare.
There was.
Often. It was mainly on the train sequence sort of towards the end of the film.
And dare I say it almost felt at parts a bit like John Wick.
Yeah.
And again, that's that grittiness, but it's that realism as much as you can possibly have in the cinema. But it felt gritty, and it felt like an element of realism we haven't seen before. Because Tom Cruise is a perfectionist, we know that, and he's also quite a traditional filmmaker. He loves cinema of old, he respects it, and he's not a massive fan of the filmmaking machine that we see now. So with all that aside, he's actually made something that is in his image, in the way he likes. This sounds like a really pretentious podcast, I'm sorry, listener, but I'm just reflecting on how he's made it, and he has made it his own film, but it's taken on a greater depth of film cinematography we've never seen before. And I loved it. It made it more immersive, it made it more enjoyable, it made it fresh, it made it new, but it made it also something familiar that we've seen in the cinemas but wasn't a Mission Impossible film. And if you put that all into a blender, press start, and mix it at 200 RPM, it spits you out with an enjoyable 2.5 hours of action-packed film that I really enjoyed.
Dare I say it, actually, sometimes I look at creative outlets and I think maybe the pandemic was probably a bit of a blessing to some of these people, and it allows them, or it has allowed them, more time to go back, revisit, and just make something better. Now, one instance, I know this has nothing to do with the film, but Tom DeLonge and Angels and Airwaves, their album Lifeforms, was supposed to be released, I think, in 2020. And actually, what they did, they put everything on hold and went, wow, we've got all this time. The world's not doing anything. There's no point in us releasing that album.
Let's do something a bit different.
Let's go and spruce it up and make it better. And of course, the album we got was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, away from that album and back to Mission Impossible, I've got a question.
Oh, right.
So your concern, well, maybe not concern, you were sort of worried that the chemistry of Tom Cruise and Hayley Atwell might not be there.
It was there. Oh, do I feel as though it was not forced, or that we're led to believe that they make that relationship a close one and very quickly? It felt very convenient, given... Well, I can't say anything. All I will say is it feels very convenient, but I think Hayley Atwell has a place, and she's very talented. We've seen her in the MCU, in other projects and other films, and she's a phenomenal actor. So I think she definitely has a place in the franchise. And I think she did very well in this film. I think it was naturally her wheelhouse. But I'm not quite sold on the relationship. But hey, it wasn't as bad as I feared, so that's got to be something, right?
Yeah, no, I'd agree. I mean, at points it felt a bit forced, but actually, as actors, they sort of bounce off each other quite well.
Yeah.
Sort of looking away from that perspective of the two characters in the film, actually, away from the screen. We won't go into too much detail, but I'll mention Rome, a yellow Fiat 500.
It's a thing of beauty.
And that action sequence with the two of them is brilliant.
It's very good. And I think you touched on it at the top of this second half, so to speak. There's humour, but it's not forced. It's not Taika Waititi forced humour. It's natural, and it is silly at times where they take a moment and look at just how bizarre things are. And they do that a couple of times, but again, that's not out of place because it's almost like the fourth wall, isn't it? Like, they know it's silly, and they know that you'll look at this and go, this is bonkers, and then they go, okay, cool, back into it.
Yeah, it's very natural, because it would have the whole cinema laughing. I mean, maybe at times there was the sort of John Wick humour.
I think we did a John Wick 3. Yeah, and we were laughing probably when we shouldn't have done.
I will say there is a moment on the train at the end. I won't say anything because this is, of course, spoiler free. Something happens, and I think I burst out laughing. Because of A, what happened, but B, it scared the shit out of me.
We did jump, but not because it's scary.
It's just unexpected.
It is, but I think the quality of this film was. I think it was expected. Did I expect to enjoy it as much as I have? I don't think I did. I think it is the blockbuster of this year. And I think he's done a blinding job.
Yeah.
He's pulled it together. It's a very good storyline. It's a standalone film if you want it to be. We don't feel shortchanged, but there's still a story to be told next year. And it is going to be another year, isn't it, until the second outing?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think he's doing a Marvel annual release.
We'll get a date in for that film, or expect to release it when we do the next episode, when we've got a bit of time to do some research and actually formulate our thoughts.
Yeah.
I say what happens in these episodes, it is just raw.
It is.
We've had very little time to process it.
Well,
and that's what makes it quite good.
Indeed, Jim Park, because we're walking back now. It's a little bit quieter, listeners. You can hear there's
barking seagull on the distance.
If you just paint a picture, so we're just walking back past the White Link ferry port, which takes merry travellers over to the Isle of Wight, the windy Isle of Wight at the moment.
Cobbled streets, and
there's restaurant goers. It's not terribly early.
No.
It's not terribly late at this moment. It's 9 o'clock.
It's still quite light, which is quite nice on a summer evening, but the weather is still a bit bit grim.
Yeah.
If you carried on walking, you'd meet the hot walls.
You would. Lovely historic
nice area.
part of Portsmouth. But yes, that's why perhaps we haven't quite succinctly and coherently kind of given our opinion. You can't call that parking. Look at that Mercedes, Dan.
Oh my God.
It's a lovely C220D, but it's at a very odd angle. Leaves a lot to be desired. Yeah, so that's, I think, a great film. A great ending. All around, it's a fantastic package. I don't think there's anything that comes close to what we've seen in cinema so far this year, or perhaps in the last year from an action standpoint. So I'm looking forward to the second one. I'm sure this will perform pretty well in the box office, but time will tell, of course, in the next couple of weeks, and by the time we do the recording of the full review, we should have a good indication about where it's going.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, before we sort of wrap up this episode,
The weapon.
Very relevant. Again, I'm not going to drop any spoilers. All I'll say is, when I thought it was going to be something biological, I was wrong.
And I think we talked about it very briefly as we were getting up from our lovely reclining seats in View Cinema. I think that's why no one knows about it, because it is very topical. And that's why when we went into this, we didn't really know what was going on, didn't really know what the storyline was, we didn't know who the big bad is or was. I think we were both pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, a little baby fox up at the top of the road there. Yeah,
there you
just gone behind the car. The wildlife, eh?
The wildlife.
If it's not the outlandish outgoers and Gunwharg, we've got baby foxes.
And seagulls in the background. What more could you want in a seaside city? They've done very well to keep it under wraps, and it was a pleasant surprise, Dan.
It was. Well, I think we should probably wrap up there, but if anyone has seen Mission Impossible 7, if you want to give us your thoughts,
please.
We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads.
We are on Threads, yeah.
Handle is @onthetopicpod, and of course, if you want to email us, it's onthetopicpodcast@gmail.com. Alex, YouTube and WordPress.
Yeah, WordPress, our website. Go on there, subscribe. There's a newsletter. It alerts you every time we do a release if you don't get notified by your podcast player of preference. And we've got all of our past episodes. Our archive is all on there for you to scroll and look at your leisure, as well as bonus content. That's on the topicpodcast.wordpress.com. Or yes, we're on YouTube. And it looks like plenty of you are going over there and pressing play, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell. And that's at OTTGITS. Or you can just simply search for On The Topic Podcast, and you'll see our lovely logo there. And go have a look. We've got lovely playlists. So we've got the rabbit hole for all of our researchable episodes. Lots of MCU content and film reviews. Of course, this one will join that list. So yes, go have a look and subscribe on YouTube.
Yep, subscribe, hit that bell, and get notified when a new episode drops. You've got no excuses wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Indeed.
And for another week, I've been Dan.
I've been Alex.
And this podcast episode is about to self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2... Busy.
It's Friday night, mate. It's what Friday night at the cinema looks like.
Apparently walk out of a disabled toilet together.
That's what that looks like.
Nightlife.
Getting some sexy time before before your viewing. That's date night, isn't it?
Isn't it? Cheeky Nando's, sex in the toilets. And
Finish off with a Disney film. Yeah.